Hello, this is the Arturia BeatStep Pro. The BeatStep Pro takes the idea of the original BeatStep and runs with it. It's a hardware sequencer and it can operate completely independently of a computer. And what's amazing about the BeatStep Pro is it lets us make complete musical ideas. We can sequence multiple devices just from this one interface in a really simplistic but really entertaining and immediate fashion. The original BeatStep let us control one lane of sequencing, but this lets us control two. And we also have a drum lane. So we're able to send two sequences and percussion, or just gates, which could be firing off other things, not just percussion, it could be clocking things too, and all from one device. Also, like the original, we have this ability to put it in control mode, where we can use the pads to send MIDI, and we use these knobs to send MIDI CCs. So that could be controlling software if you've got it connected to the computer, or it could be controlling hardware if you've got it hooked up via MIDI. You can send CCs with this. The BeatStep Pro is completely system agnostic. You can connect it to basically anything. So I can control VSTs, drum racks, drum synths, anything in my computer that will respond to MIDI. I can sequence it from this awesome physical interface. But USB is only the tip of the iceberg. We also have MIDI. So we're able to sequence MIDI devices with this if we wanted to. We could be sending sequencer 1, sequencer 2, and our percussion on completely independent MIDI channels so that we could control a whole, a rack of MIDI gear. And lastly, we have an insane complement of analog connectivity as well. We have two completely independent CV and gate outputs, which also have this third lane for velocity, which is like a sort of voltage modulation, and you could use that to control pretty much anything. If you've got a modular or a micro brute or something like that, you can use that velocity lane to control the filter or the amplifier or, anything really, as long as you've got the input for it. So it's a modulation source, a bonus that we can program from here. And then we also have gates. There are 8 gate outputs on this thing so that we can use this thing, the drum output, to control analog drum modules. I have the Tip-Top Audio 808 and 909 modules here, and they are just directly connected to the back of the BeatStep Pro. And if we're using it via MIDI or USB, in fact, we can send 16 lanes of gate data. And of course, I'm using drum modules here, but if, nothing stops you sending this into advanced sequencers, just fire off sounds or fire off modulation and stuff. There's lots of creative things that you can do with gate outputs, even if you don't have drum modules. So this is just one application. And the other thing to stress, I don't have a computer here, but I really want to stress the fact that this is completely agnostic in terms of what it works with. It's insanely fun doing this thing with VSTs as well. So I have a bunch of hardware here, that's what we're going to play with, but you don't need this to have this much fun with this thing. It will basically work with whatever you've got, unless you have some kind of wax cylinder or something, in which case, I'm really sorry, but we can't help. The way it works is like this. If I go to sequencer 1, you see this little keyboard appear. These are the black notes and these are the white notes. And that is my Juno 60, which actually has been MIDI retrofitted in a really twisted, weird way. The oldest machine on the table actually has MIDI. So we can play it like a keyboard, and you see here we have a little indicator that says these are octave up and down. If I push this, so we're able to play the source with this little funky keyboard. And if I hold Shift, you see we get this extra thing, which actually up the top is very much like the BeatStep. We have a bunch of different scales. So there's like chromatic, major, minor, Dorian, mixolydian, harmonic minor, and blues. But most interesting of all, this one on the end, which is user scale. So what the user scale lets us do is when we plug this in, we use the MIDI control center software and we're able to pick a scale. And at the moment, I've got A sharp Phrygian, which I basically looked up and is like Aphex Twin's favorite scale. So I thought, since I've got all this sort of analog acid gear, that would be a fun one to try. So I have my user scale set up that way, and you can set it up however you like. You just go in and pick the notes that you want it to correspond to. We also have the ability to sequence in different ways. As in, once I've inputted a sequence, it can go forwards, or I can do this, and then the sequence will start playing reverse. Alternate is basically where the sequence is going back and forward, and triplet is changing the timing. We also have time divisions here so that we can sort of clock, speed up and slow down the sequence accordingly in relationship to one another. There are some other important things to point out, i.e. swing, randomness, probability, and this funky roller looper thing. So we're able to adjust the probability that notes will occur, the randomness within the scale of the notes, adding a kind of unknown element to our sequence, and swing. And we can do this per track or globally. It's really fun doing this with drums, for example, especially on randomness, because it starts to like improvise drums based on, you know, the kind of roll of a dice. And then down here we have drums. So I'm able to just hit the pad and hear my modules. Very cool. And then once again, I've got my sequence up here and my microboot here. If I hit play, here's one I made earlier. I can mute the drums if I want to do everything at once, or I can hold drum and mute and just mute parts of them. Bring them all back in. I'm going to start a sequence from scratch. So let me clear this. So shift and clear pattern. Now shift and clear pattern on sequence 2 and clear here. So we're just starting from a blank slate. With everything cleared, I'm able to hit play and record. And you see that we're looping within 16 beats here. I can just octave shift down. I'm able to jam in using this as a kind of keyboard. And then I can come down here and then turning off record. Yeah, I like that. So, but then if I want to work in a kind of 8080 style way, if I hold drum and this, because I want to mess with my maraca, now, if I do this, I'm able to just edit that. And then I can add swing per track. Or introduce this idea of randomness. Really fun. Super immediate. No keyboard was touched, no mouse was touched. If I want, I can extend this sequence. So if I hold shift and then this, my weird little Juno melody here is extended onto a other line. I'll just mute my drums. So now actually my Juno melody is over 2 bars. So if I come down here, now let's start working in a kind of old school way. If I look here, this knob corresponds to number 6 here that says 6. So if I adjust here, oh, I'm in gate mode by the way. See the thing updates? And very nice, these are touch sensitive. If I want to see what note I've got selected, I can put my finger on the knob and I can see it. C#3. So, and 10 is active. And I can just sort of try different notes, kind of listen. Do I like the sound of that? Does that do something nice to my sequence? Is it right or not? It's a kind of experimentation. You don't quite know what's going to happen to the melody when you turn the knob, but if you mess around enough, you just sort of come across these little satisfying little combos. Because I'm working in this freeform way, I end up putting like the claps in a different place. If I was programmer, I would have probably just put them on the 5 and 13. But this whole sequence has been started kind of off the grid in a way. And what's nice is that we have this thing called last step. So if I go to sequencer 2 and I hit last step, what it does is it allows us to sort of shorten the sequence. So now the sequence is going to repeat when it gets to this point. So it's looping out of kilter with sequencer 1. So now I'm building in variation. I've extended the length of my drum. Wicked. So you see how it's kind of freeform in this way. We can work in a rigid fashion and start everything on the one, or I can just kind of put stuff in as I feel it's meant to come in. And there's just interesting things that happen when you give yourself like a physical interface to work from. The interface kind of informs the process in its own way. One really nice thing that I can do is I can transpose the whole sequence. I've got transpose link here, which means that the sequences transpose with one another. If I hold the sequencer button down, then I just have to go. Very important thing is that we can save sequences into this thing. There's a project that I've currently got selected, and we can have up to 16 projects. And a project is made up of 16 different sequencer or drum patterns, totally independent of one another. So if you were putting together a live set and you had a bunch of different melodies based on a scale and stuff, it'd be really easy to store them and recall them. Oh, actually, I didn't talk about gates. I'll put in some notes. And then you see here we can cycle through pitch, velocity, which is that extra like lane of modulation per note, and then gate down here. We can extend them out. But what's awesome is if you notice, when I twizzle this all the way to the end here, beyond 99, we get ties and slides. And this allows us to make really interesting sort of acid. You hear that slide? Oh, wow. Speed the whole thing up. Let's mess with probability. that gives you a good sense of how it works. It's very straightforward. There's not really a great deal else to it. So I think probably the best thing to do is I just play around. Let's actually just make some sequences. I hope you get a sense of how fun it is basically to experiment with a piece of hardware without having to look at a screen and without having to use a keyboard and mouse. I've doubled the sequence. And then I come down to sequencer 1. So I'll give myself 64 steps to work within my sequencer. So I've just extended nothing. Nice. Now I have the velocity connected to the filter input on the microbridge, so I'm able to adjust, sequence the microbridge filter with the control. Fun. Let's do something a little bit less maudlin in the major key. If I come to shift, you see that I've got a snare drum on the 5 and the 13, and once again, that's labeled knob 5, and this is labeled knob 13. With shift selected, and then here, you hear how that slips that note slightly out of time. Too early now. What we're able to do here is we're subtly adjusting the timing of the drums in a way we can slip and slide the drums to give a groove, a feel. Arturia BeatStep Pro. It's insanely fun to mess around with. It works with all kinds of gear. If you have CV gear, if you have MIDI gear, if you just have a computer, this thing will work with all of those things and actually at the same time. So have fun, and we look forward to hearing what music you make with it. Thanks.